Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you an extra special review of a Are You Afraid of the Dark short story that released in a TV guide. And this story was released in October of 1996 in the October 19th through 25th issue. And the story in question is The Tale of the Haunted Hearse. Now, this chronologically, currently, is the first known kids' horror story from these big IPs like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, The Haunting Hour, to ever get put into TV Guide. And the funny thing is that there possibly could be way more out there, but you just have to like look through them and see if there's anything in there. Because sometimes on the covers there will be a short story advertised on the cover. Sometimes, in the case of the Haunting Hour one that I've talked about, there's absolutely nothing, and you have to know what's in the magazine. But sometimes, if you open it up to the content page, it will be mentioned there. And in this issue here, the Are You Afraid of the Dark story is advertised in the content page, so that's how you know it's in there. So it made it easier to track this one down. So this story was actually written by the co-creator of Are You Afraid of the Dark, DJ McHale, and he was very instrumental in getting that show off the ground and running, especially in the first 5 seasons, and he was always on board and still is today with Are You Afraid of the Dark. He seems like a great guy to talk to. He loves talking about this project. It's one of his favorite things he's ever done. And the fact that he wrote a short story for TV Guide, like R.L. Stine did a couple times, is really cool, and it kind of shows that even in 1996, when Are You Afraid of the Dark was phasing out after season 5 and took a long hiatus, that he still cared enough to put a story in here for the Halloween time for the fans, and I think that's cool. Is this story any good? After reading this, if you're an Are You Afraid of the Dark fan out there, this is actually a pretty solid story. This easily could have been an episode of the show, hands down, especially for what Dark is known for, or I guess textbook Are You Afraid of the Dark. This fits every bill of that. If you're curious and you've experienced everything Are You Afraid of the Dark and you're looking for something else to try, pick up this issue of TV Guide and try this story out. I think you would really enjoy it. Also, if you're a fan of gargoyles at all, there's a little 3-page comic story in here of the Gargoyles cartoon from Disney. That's the actual reason why I picked it up, and I accidentally found that there was an Are You Afraid of the Dark story in here, so go figure. Pick this up for your collection if you're interested. So let's get into the plot overview of The Tale of the Haunted Hearse without giving too much away. So this one is probably the longest short story in the TV guides that I've come across for kids horror IPs, at least. And the story starts off kind of like in a fun Midnight Society type of way, where DJ McHale's like, this is for all the members of the Midnight Society. And it starts off in a narration going over some events. It's coming up Halloween night, and this 14-year-old girl named Allie Mitchell really wants to go to this Halloween party, and she has this idea to dress up like Shaquille O'Neal. What? Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq himself. She has planned an outfit to dress up like him. That was crazy to me when I read that, and I had to do a double take, but I thought that was kind of funny. She needs to finish getting the rest of her costume right. She has the shoes, the socks, the jersey, the shorts, and all that. She just needs a bald head thing to put on her. Now, the only thing is, it's never really described how she looks, and it could be in a bad connotation, if you get what I'm saying, about her dressing up like Shaq. But anyway, getting off into a tangent there. So she's talking to her friend the day of Halloween, and she's like saying that she has some plans. She needs to go to the Halloween store after school to finish getting everything else for her Shaq costume. But she sees this creepy black hearse just drive by, and it seems like it was like aimed at her. And she looks at her friend and says, "Hey, did you see that hearse?" And her friend thinks that she's just playing games and saying stuff to scare her because it's Halloween. And Allie's like, okay, well, that was weird. And she goes to school and she's in her classroom. She looks out her classroom window, kind of like how Laurie Strode looked out the classroom window during Halloween, 1978. And she sees the black hearse following her. And she screams and freaks out. And her teacher's like, well, what's this about? And, you know, Allie has to stick up for herself, but nobody seems to believe her. So she's like, okay, well, this is weird and strange. And after school, she decides to still head to the costume store to get the rest of her Shaq costume. But when she hops on her bike, she heads down into town. But when she gets there, she sees this black hearse pull up to a building nearby. And something is like pulling her in to go investigate what this thing is, because it's been following her around all day. And her intuition is kind of kicking on and telling her that maybe she needs to see what's going on in this building. So when she goes to the building, she goes inside and sees everybody in a funeral. And she sees this funeral parlor director in there, and he's not saying a word. And she walks up into the building. They say, and he's kind of directing her to go to the casket. And inside of the casket is her lifeless body, which is kind of eerie and creepy to think about. And she looks on in horror and sees her mom crying, saying something like, I didn't see it, I didn't see it. And she's like, what didn't you see? And nobody seems to be acknowledging that she's there. And the moment that she tries to break out of this thing that she's experiencing and she tries to get somebody to talk, everything in the room disappears. And she's like, well, that was strange. I don't know how to feel about this. She gets really creeped out, leaves. I guess she gets the rest of her Shaq costume and heads home. She tries to tell her mom about what happened, and her mom seems to think, or maybe she's contemplating on telling her mom. It's kind of vague on this. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But she has some apprehension, at least her mom, given Allie's attitude about, I guess, what she's experienced throughout the day. So they hop in the car, and Allie's mom is going to take her to this Halloween party, but there's fog outside and it's low visibility. And what ends up happening is they have to stop because they can't literally see anything. And there's some type of sign. In a lot of ways, it's very reminiscent to Final Destination, where Allie remembers some context clues that she picked up while at this funeral parlor, and has this gut intuition to get her and her mother out of the car as fast as possible. And there may or may not be a very narrow window to escape a tragic head-on collision with another car that could not see in the fog as well. And then you realize the gravity of the situation and what all the rest of the story meant to the end of the story in terms for Allie. And it kind of provides context near the end of what she experienced might be tied to the power of Halloween or something like that. And then the story ends off kind of like how it began, in that typical Midnight Society fashion, with DJ McHale signing off, putting out the fire and stuff. And that's essentially what you're going to expect out of the Tale of the Haunted Hearse. Now, I thought that DJ McHale wrote a very riveting short story here. For the page space that we got, there was surprisingly some good characterization going on for this. It's probably the best written out of the TV Guide kids horror short stories that I've read in terms of prose. It's setting on Halloween, and having this Halloween party is really cool. I like that. If I was back in 1996 and it was around Halloween time and I was a kid reading this probably would have got me jazzed and excited for the week after to go trick-or-treating and all that, or maybe go to a Halloween party or a school event that has some Halloween stuff. It has a good atmosphere to it. Allie, while she's not the most fleshed out character ever, she goes through a harrowing experience, and it's kind of frightening to imagine a lot of the things that she went through, like witnessing her own funeral, seeing her own dead, lifeless body, having to recognize signs and save her own mother and her own life, potentially, from danger that's going to happen. It was really cool. It was really cool to read. And it was, like I said, for a short story, it was pretty riveting. I also kind of dig the ending to this story as well. It serves like a powerful punch, and it was kind of emotional. This would have worked splendidly well in an Are You Afraid of the Dark episodic setting. This would have been probably one of the more tenser episodes if they were able to capture a lot of the mood that this short story brought. And yeah, I mean, it had a fun little pace to it and everything. It probably flowed the best out of these TV Guide stories. Honestly, I had a really good time with it. But I do have some negatives with it, and these negatives are kind of heavy ones. And I'll start off with my big one here. Allie's interest of, wanting to dress up like Shaquille O'Neal is really bizarre. Like, I don't know why I viewed this as a negative. I just think it's kind of silly. There's a lot of goofy stuff going on in the story. And a lot of, like, by the numbers suspense stuff, like being in school and looking out of a window and seeing something following you. Like, something as simple as a hearse, I guess, is creepy, but for the story being called The Tale of the Haunted Hearse, it doesn't really feel like the hearse is following her. It just feels like it's nearby wherever she's at. And we're supposed to be told, we're being told, not actually shown, that she's being followed by this thing. She just keeps going into places where it happens to be nearby. And I don't really feel like what the story is going for actually was executed all that well on page at times, especially dealing with the hearse following her around. It didn't really come across like that, and that was kind of disappointing. And yeah, I also feel like the story could have been a little bit better if it had more. For the page constraints on this one, it's very comparable to like a Goosebumps Haunted Library Trilogy mini book, maybe 15 pages of that size of text going on here. So it is a little bit more fleshed out, but given that page constraint there, I really feel like there still could have been more to this story. I feel like the whole setup in like the first few paragraphs were very vague and skimmed over. It wasn't really that interesting. It didn't really kick on until like halfway in the short story. And the build, like I said, we're being told events, not really shown, so the lack of believability there of if she's actually being followed by this hearse is not really believable. So those things added up for me, unfortunately. And from a 0 to 5 star basis, I still think that this is a very good story. I think that it's not quite great. It's not quite very good, in my opinion. But it is definitely a well-written one and revisitable in like that solid good way. So because I do 0.5 or I guess 0.25 increments, I gave this story a 3.75 out of 5 stars, which is a very good rating for a short story from me. Highly recommend this one. Like I said, if you're an Are You Afraid of the Dark fan, or maybe you're a short fiction fan and you love kids horror, try this out. You can pick it up this issue. I know it has a weird photo of Brooke Shields, a weird outfit here. I know, but can't help the cover. But I think most people would enjoy this. I really do. So yeah, if you have read The Tale of the Haunted Hearse before, let me know down in the comments section. Did you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.